ancillary services, we would need to go outside of Fort Lincoln even after the shopping center has been completed. And so it would be very important for 5CO3 to work with 5CO4 to make sure that those ancillary services would be available on that side too.
One of the thing I left off my statement. There have been a lot of changes in this city in the last, well, there are lots and lots and lots of changes in this city, but there's some key changes in Ward 5. There's a new council member that isn't necessarily from the old school. And I say that in a good way because partly the old school was focused on being bad at school, we'll say, instead of working broader for the community. And so, and then you mentioned the Dakota Crossing shops, the way the ANCs are being organized in the ward is changing. Fort Lincoln's being now covered by 2 ANCs. I just realized that you're getting all the questions. You can prepare all your answers. Wow, I should have had 2 sets of questions. So how do you think, with this new day, and I hope across the ward, a greater desire for openness, transparency, and fairness in government, how do you see working, and council people who've been complicit in this broader community not getting what was promised to it before? How do you see this new day? And how do you want to work with the council member to ensure that, at the end of the day, there is new light?
I've had some experience at that already. And what I can say about that is, I think that when a new council member comes on board, that it may take a minute for he or she to get grounded and to understand all of the issues, the complexities, especially of the issues in Fort Lincoln. It seems to me that many decisions have been made by the ANC in Fort Lincoln without real input from the citizens, and there are decisions that were made on behalf of the citizens, and then you come back after the fact and you want a rubber stamp for that. What's been attempted already is to engage the council member in a forum that would help to work on that. And the decision that the council member made was that he has to work with the current advice for neighborhood commissioner, and if that should change on November 6th, then he'll come and hear what we have to say. But it's been my experience that an engaged community, it doesn't matter about what a council member says. You can make a council member do what you want them to do. And so what's been happening here is the polarization of the Fort Lincoln community. I mean, it's almost like, it's almost like coming into Fort Lincoln, you're coming into a plantation. You're coming into a plantation and each of the senior buildings have overseers. Each of the apartment buildings have overseers, and then the leaseholders in those buildings are the slaves. And that's what I live in one, that's what it feels like, and I'm hearing that some others feel that way too. And so when you have that kind of division and people not thinking for themselves but having somebody else to come to them and say, look, this is a good idea, let's do this. And taking advantage of the fact that a lot of people don't know how to do the research, or what in professional terms we call due diligence, to be able to make decisions on their own, then unfortunately some people are relying on folk to make decisions for them that are not necessarily good for them, but might be good for the person that's making the decisions.
One of the concerns, another
with the slave thing she said.
Par-
I
Pardon?
take issue with a slave statement.
Questions could be asked at the end.
That,
You have a question?
that's a reasonable point. No, and you can remember, and everyone can write their questions down or their comments. I think that it is important, though, to recognize in the city that a lot of time we've been quiet. And there's a line that I use, well, you don't want to hear about everything I've learned in the years I've been involved. But there are two lines I have that are relevant to this. One is, when you ask for nothing, that's what you get. When you ask for the world, you don't get it, but you get a lot more than nothing.
Thank you. Yes.
And the other line is, the great thing for developers in DC is that we sell ourselves for so little. And that's why I'm here tonight, because I know about the story about Fort Lincoln, and I think it's a really important story that deserves wider awareness. And sometimes you have to say stark language that can be hurtful because it's true. So getting back to maybe less incendiary questions, and we're getting close to the end for this panel, would be the ANC. I don't remember the exact fee, but there's a fee per resident that goes to the ANC. It's something like, it's not quite $2 a person. And some ANC chairs use that money illegally, not this ANC, fortunately, but ANC 5B did. But it's supposed to be used for the management of the ANC, for use by commissioners to communicate with residents. But then also, most ANCs put part of it to the side and give it out through a grant process. And the Fort Lincoln area hasn't maybe received its fair share of that kind of money from the ANC historically. What do you think about that, and how would you change it?
Well, I think very little about that. But I understand why. Because there are certain criteria for using that money. And if you want to keep a community uninformed, then you're not going to use money to inform, to do things to inform them. And it's unfair. It's been unfair for a long time. It's unfair now, but it'll change after November 6th if I get elected to this position.
I could ask more questions, but they would be repetitive. So I'm gonna ask if the board has any questions first, and then people in the audience. We have for about 7 minutes, 8 minutes for more questions from the audience or the board. Or yeah, if you want to write the questions, I'll read them, with my great speaking voice.
But you want to start with mine?
And does the board have any?
Yeah, I have one question. I want to know, how do you see the cultural center in the community, and how it's being used, and when can the community start using it?
You know what, Ms. Griffin, that's something I'd like to talk to the Civic Association about, because it's drastically underutilized. And the fact that we can't use it in the evenings, that should be to me, that should be the home office for you to be able to have Civic Association meetings. And it's not a lot of activity going on up there. It's one thing that Mr. King did say to me last summer that I agree with. He said that if the activity did not increase, at the cultural center, that it should be let to a private contractor. And I agree with that, but I think the private contractor should be the Civic Association. And I think that that's one of those things where some community parity could come. And if that doesn't happen, then I think that we should use our political will to get the Parks and Recreation to make it more available to us. And so if Mr. King and I agree on one thing, I think that he's probably right there. But I don't think that it should be contracted out to some entity outside of the community. I think that it should be contracted for $1 to the Civic Association for 99 years. I know that can happen because I participated in negotiations where such things did happen.
I know you don't want to hear from me on this, but when I worked in Baltimore County, the way they do it there is actually community centers, recreation facilities aren't actually managed by the DPR. They're managed by citizen councils. And the citizen people, like if you're into yoga and I'm into biking and whatever, we can offer that programming. We're checked and all that, but that's a model that maybe with DC coming up and doing the parks plan, that Fort Lincoln maybe has a model opportunity to show the rest of the city how to do that.
And what we could, if I might include this, there are a lot of owners and renters in Fort Lincoln that have pets, and they want a park to take their dogs. They want a park to take their dogs where they can run around and play and everything. And I think that that's something that I would, as a commissioner, ask the Civic Association to take that issue on, if you will, so that it can be supported by the position or the power in the position of the ANC. Involve the citizens, our residents that own the dogs, and let's make that happen fairly quickly.
We have a question, but I know we're gonna let you ask your question without writing it down. Or is it one of them here?
Yeah, about the use of the cultural arts center, the new cultural art, the land is over that, because that's manned by the senior citizens division of the Parks and Recreation. But he was willing to change his hours from 1 to 9, so that it would be accessible, but he would have to have the support of the community to do that. Now, this Department of Recreation makes a lot of money off of the user fee, because in the morning they have a mental health agency, really all day. A mental health agency uses it, then they rent the park out, they rent out this pool over here, at which at one time the residents use. So I think that in addition, I see no need for someone to make a profit out of running these things. We just need to get behind the Department of Parks and Recreation to make our facilities more accessible to us.
And I would support that. That's what the
That's
Civic
the
Association
bill.
wants.
One question here is, how can seniors in the community, either living in condos or apartments, get better? How can seniors be assisted in getting better transportation around the community, and also disabled access? For example, Ms. Brown is injured right now. She can't be down on the floor with the rest of us because this facility, as great as it is, this particular part of it doesn't have disabled access. So how would you do both?
I'm so glad I was at the last Civic Association meeting to find out that the Civic Association has obtained its 501c3 recognition from the Internal Revenue Service. That's a great thing. I think that that's something that all of the, I think that that's something that all participating members should be able to use as you sponsor, say, the Wesley House Resident Council to do some things. So that's another thing to talk about. But you may remember, I don't know if you came to a transportation meeting that we had at the Wesley House 3 years ago. It was a follow-up meeting to a meeting where I told some residents that the Department of Transportation has grant money for communities to buy transport vans. And the Ward 5 senior coordinator said she'd never heard anything about it. Well, lo and behold, we were wrong. Metro Access, Metro Transportation, and the gentleman from the Department of Transportation let everybody know. We have grant funds so that you can buy a transport van. I would support whether I win or not, but I want to win. Whether I win or not, the Civic Association, Ms. Stokes, we could write a proposal to the Civic Association to get a transport van. And that would solve that problem.
Okay. This is just, I'm relaying a comment. Person took offense to the statement about plantation, overseers, etc. And then I don't like to ask these questions, but this is how we see our character. A person makes the point, this could be just an ad hominem attack, but this we get to see what you're made of here, is they claim that you don't get along well with others in Wesley House.
Not true. That is a big false tale.
Okay, but wait a minute, I got this. I got this. This is a perfect example of the plantation mentality that I was just talking about. Okay? There's a plantation mentality in the senior buildings that's been very carefully cultivated for over 20 years. Our building has only been occupied for 4 years. And in less than a year, somebody left themselves exposed to be polarized into the cultivation of separation. You know, I don't want to get along with somebody who is a yes man or a yes woman, because God gave me the ability to think for myself. When I say, because it's important to me for you all to understand what I mean when I say that when I come into Fort Lincoln now, when I first moved here, I didn't feel that way, but now, having had some dealings in Fort Lincoln, when I come into Fort Lincoln, I feel as if I am coming into a plantation. I feel it like it's a plantation, and as I approach my building, I'm gonna see one of the overseers, and if I don't see them, I'm gonna feel the fact that they're there, because it's the polarization, and I'm not saying that they're right or they're wrong. I'm just saying that this is what exists because people do what they know. People do what they know, and what I'm saying is, I don't get along with people who think that they can enslave me. I came from Jim Crow, North Carolina, and I wasn't enslaved. And I'm not going to be enslaved in Fort Lincoln by anybody.
Excuse me, I'd like to back up what she's saying too, and I said this.
We're gonna be here all night if members of the audience can just speak out like that.
It's not gonna take me but a few minutes, and I told Mr. King and the Ward 5 representative, I feel that the residents of Fort Lincoln have been sold for some trinkets, just like Indians in Africa. For you to get up and say, oh, Costco's giving us flat screen TVs and some exercise equipment is an insult to me. And people come to Mr. King because he's been able to capture the senior vote in this city. And I feel that his building his power and authority has negated the rest of us who are buying homes. So he has, in fact, made this community quite divided.
Thank you.
Between-
There's, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I know.
I have a question for Bill.
What would you do after November 6th, after the election? Will you be able to give us a light in between 3001 and 3005? Because we need a light there ASAP.
Okay, I've actually had a conversation with the Department of Transportation about that. I heard that a couple of people were, injured and or killed there. I called the Department of Transportation when I went to the post office one morning, and I realized that two people in wheelchairs were trying to cross the road. And you know the police officer that sits there with the radar? He finally got out of his car and stopped the traffic so that the people in the wheelchairs could cross the road. That's a sin. That's a sin because all it takes is a request, but when I put the request in, that Mr. Cheeks can't, everybody know who Mr. Cheeks is. Mr. Cheeks cannot fulfill the request unless it comes from Mr. King. So that's the political answer. That's the political answer to a community problem. The first thing I would do is call Terry Bellamy and tell him to get a light there. The light doesn't have to stay, doesn't have to be calibrated with the other lights, but at least when a person gets there, that they can press a button and they can get a green light and cross the street safely. I would do that whether, if I don't win, then y'all just have to come go with me. Because I do not want to underemphasize this. You do not have to be an elected official to get things done if the community comes together around it. You're welcome.
Yeah, I'm being told, and that's true, we have to move on. Do you, I know I'm supposed to give you the right to wrap up for 3 minutes, but I think you made a lot of your points clear. You probably don't need 3 minutes, especially if you're just gonna say vote for me, because I'm great. But how about 1 minute, and then we'll,
If you want to keep getting what you've been getting, keep voting the way you've been voting.
No way.
If you want something different and better, vote for me.
that helps with our time. Thank you. Thank you very much. I get to learn from this too, which is really great, and I appreciate your questions and your answers and the comments. This is how we build a better city, especially if we share from and learn from each other. And
I
that's-
really appreciate this opportunity that you all give me to let you hear and see who I am.
Thank you very much. Well, we have Ms. Jacqueline Manning and Ms. Carolyn Robinson, who are vying to represent you in ANC 5C04. Ms. Manning's currently the chair of ANC 5C, so because that gives her an advantage, we're gonna let Ms. Robinson speak first for 3 minutes, and then Ms. Manning, and then all the questions, but maybe I'll mix them up a little differently. Try to catch you off guard. But, Ms. Robinson, you want to make your statement?
Yes, good evening. My name is Carolyn A. Robinson. I'm a fourth-generation Washingtonian growing up in River Terrace in Ward 7. I've lived in River Terrace, Anacostia, Petworth, and Trinidad neighborhoods. I presently reside in the Fort Lincoln Senior Village 3 Petersburg Apartments. I decided to run for Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner 5C04 after attending meetings concerning the Dakota Crossing Shopping Center, where Costco is scheduled to open in November 2012. I have serious concerns regarding the traffic studies and the methodology that was used to arrive at the traffic studies and their conclusions. I have concerns regarding the environmental study, which has not been made available. My traffic concerns are legitimate because I've been a public service vehicle operator for the past 37 years. I deal with transportation and traffic on a daily basis due to my occupation. The proposed change to DDOT office are not acceptable due to the volume of traffic that exists presently. There are foreseeable problems in the future upon the shopping center completion. My platform is an advocate for the community concerns 24/7 by email, crobinson800@gmail.com. Transparent and direct constituent contacts. Monthly single-member district meetings. No decisions made without constituent input. A 10-member advisory council of the SMD to advise and suggest the needs of the community and work with city officials to address the concerns. I also intend to furnish the National Park Service planned environmental assessment of the parcel of land being transferred for the use of the Fort Lincoln development. And I'll give you a little bit about my professionalism, especially for you, Mr. Layman, because you enjoy this. Besides being a public service vehicle operator since 1975, advocating for drivers since the DC Taxi Cab Establishment Act of 1985, actively testifying at commission meetings, city council hearings, special roundtables, and any outside meetings involving transportation, include street safe regional pedestrian safety programs. I'm also a public industry member of the National Capital Region Transportation Planning Board, the Regional Taxi Cab Regulators meetings. I was the only female participant for the Taxi and Limousine Industry Study Task Force appropriated by City Council and convened by Councilmember Jim Grant, former chairperson for the Environment and Public Works. I also was part of the COG bicycle, the BAWA. Since I only have a few minutes, the last thing I will say that I appeared in Cambridge Who's Who, Executive Professional Registry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Of course, I'm into that transportation stuff, and but maybe everyone else isn't. But that's we should talk. Ms. Manning, would you like to say it?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Manning. I'm currently the chair for 5B, which will eventually change in January to the 5C04 single-member district. 5B represents Trinidad. It encompasses Langston Carver Terrace, Brentwood, the Arboretum. Now, with my single-member district, which is 5B09, I represent 4 civic associations, which is Arboretum, Gateway, South Central, and Ivy City. Now, with that saying, that's 4 civic association meeting. We also did a joint where we have a quarterly civic association meeting together where the community comes together to talk about the different issues that we can support one another on. At that time, before I became the chair of 5B09, I was just a single-member district representative, and as you know, we have the current triangle that's where the potential Walmart is going. But because we heard the voices of our residents, we decided that we did not want the big box store there. And that's what it's all about, is empowering the residents to come out and to hear. We could not have done that without the affected, impacted area of the Arboretum community writing their letter of opposition and the different things that they wanted to see at that triangle. Now, just to go back a little bit, to give you some history about myself, I'm a product of Washington, D.C., D.C. Public School. I graduated from the District of Columbia. I did attend New York City College for grad school, but I did not complete it. So I did come back home and I became both of my parents' caregiver. So I still live in the house where I was born. So my information is public information. As always, I do give it out, and you can still find me anywhere in the community. The great thing about the 4 Civic Association, because each community has its own unique, different ideas and needs. As you know, that the Ivy City community is going under the what we're gonna do with the Carmel School. As you know, they're in opposition, and the commission supported it. As a single member district representative, I am only one vote. Even though I am the chair, I'm still only one vote. There's 12 commissions in the 5B commission. So when the vote is taken, everyone has to either support it, they vote, or they abstain on it. But on this one with the Carmel School, we supported the Ivy City community because the school has been sitting there vacant for so long, and our mayor wanted to put the bus depot there for the charter buses that's going back and forth from Union Station. The second opposition that we had supported this year was for the Spingarn High School for the green space to be used for the charter, for the train tracks, the trolley coming down. So those are the different things that are currently going on, and we're continuing to fight for the support of what's going on at triangle. I always call it a triangle because Blaisdell Road, New York Avenue is a triangle in the city. And that property now is a blighted property. We just, we went to the, let me stand up because I want to make sure I can see your faces, but I just want to make sure because some of you are straining to see me. I do apologize for sitting. We just won where we forced one of the potential liquor license to come to the harbor place, the Arboretum place. So they had them to come out. You want me to stop? She's called time.
Well, 30 more seconds. We'll indulge you for a little bit more. Just
okay.
We're
I just want to be fair in the time.
No.
Okay.
I mean, from both of your opening statements, I think the people in SMD 5C4 are fortunate that they're two solid candidates. And I certainly would hate to be in the position of having to pick. And so one of the ways we're going to help people do that is by, again, questions. And I guess the first question, the one question that's definitely different is, that's first, and that's, the SMD is huge, physically. I mean, it's a couple square miles. Some ANC SMDs are a few blocks. So, how do you think about, what's your plan for having meetings or, interacting with this civic association as well as the others? If you're to be elected, I guess Ms. Robinson, you can go first. We're gonna alternate, so.
Okay, there are approximately over 1,600 constituents in Single Member District 5CO4. And I attended the Arboretum Civic Association meeting a couple of weeks ago. And I'm fortunate Mr. Peterson has reached out to me with the Fort Lincoln Civic Association. One of my intentions was to have monthly meetings with the constituents to find out what their needs are. And I'll have to strategically plan the meetings, hopefully, that we will be able to use the cultural center to have meetings on different days. We'll have to look at the calendar and see how we can adjust to have everybody. It needs to be all-inclusive. If everyone doesn't have a stake, we all are stakeholders in Ward 5. So we need to have positions to have it. I would intend to meet with everyone in my single member district.
Thank you. Ms. Manning, same question?
I will continue to do the same that I've always done with my current single member district. The meetings are important. I meet with the Civic Association president. Most of the time we are talking about the issues that they have voted on and where they stand with, and to alternate the meetings around the different civic associations, because coming to Fort Lincoln is new. We will it would be something because we're bringing neighborhoods together, even though we're not together, we're crossing because the ideas are different. And because we are bordering 5CO3, when those meetings, to let the candidate know what the issues are, how can we are the same side feeling the same way? What are the different, how can we compromise that? Is there any way to compromise it, or is it straight out no of how the residents feel? Because you will have to work within each community to make sure they understand what's going on and do you support them. I've had Gateway to support the Arboretum and vice versa of knowing their issues, because you have to know when you're in that single member district, they need the support of each community of what's going on, what impact. Great example, the clubs that's on Queen Chapel Road, that traffic, that noise, and how that noise pattern travel once the traffic stops. That not only impacts Gateway because it's affected right there, it impacts the Arboretum, it impacts South Central, and it impacts also some of South Dakota Avenue residents right here at Dakota Crossing.
Thank you. Ms. Manning, then what's your position on the land disposition agreement and holding the developers to the commitments they made to the community for various benefits and development initiatives?
I applaud the community because that's what it's all about. It's not about me being the representative, because I do represent the community, but at the same time, it's the residents that are affected by it. And I applaud them for moving forward with the appeal, and that the residents are standing up and saying these are the things that we were supposed to get, and these are the things that we need. And we're transitioning, we're evolving every year. Something new is happening, the environment will be changing. So how is it going to impact us? And if you don't hear from us, the taxpayers, then there's a problem. This is the same as me being a representative, a commissioner, and having going to council. I'm not supporting council on any of the issues. I have to tell them where we stand with that. So I do applaud this community for standing up for that, for the different changes that are happening. I mean, it's a historical setting. So what's happening now needs to be done. Because you can't wait until the next, something else pops up. You can't wait.
That's definitely true about Walmart, for example. I was involved in work for Walmart stuff, so, and that's a perfect example kind of relating to this general question of when the developers roll off the elected officials, it makes it hard for citizens to get our positions represented. But Ms. Robinson, your position on the land disposition agreement and the Civic Association, how you see the SMD piece of that?
Well, I also applaud the Fort Lincoln Civic Association for being steadfast in trying to just justify and get the rights that were needed. It is really sad that the government chooses to arbitrarily do things that are really against the law. And you have to you appeal the decisions, and hopefully with the condo agreement that they are misrepresenting, it'll be resolved, and all the tenants and everybody that's a stakeholder in this part of development will be compensated.
How are you, and this, Ms. Robinson first and then Ms. Manning, on Ms. Lillian's point about the cultural center and its operation, including some of the comments people made about making its operation more responsive to the needs of the community? How would you go about trying to accomplish that?
Well, I attended a meeting with Councilmember McDuffie at the Cultural Center, and there were a lot of concerns in regards to DPR, just with one incident in particular, with the seniors and the aerobics, the morning aerobics. They used to have a program there, and the program was discontinued. And it's the Cultural Center should be multi-use. It should be used for everyone in the community. It shouldn't be parceled out or rented to other entities without the community involvement. I would hopefully, and I would try to meet with the director of DPR or all the people who are functioning in that capacity to see to it that the residents of Fort Lincoln utilize the Cultural Center, because the Cultural Center was built specifically for the residents.
Ms. Manning?
The Parks and Rec obligation is to the community. In the past, what we've done in Arboretum and Gateway, We have made those changes by having the ward manager constantly come out to the meeting to see the needs of that. There's a book that comes out every spring and every fall that talks about the different programs that are there. If the site manager is not doing their job, that is supposed to be reported, that the board manager is supposed to be notified immediately. He is on speed dial. The issues that are currently happening there should never be taking place. That rec is for everyone. It is a community center. Everyone from a baby to 100 years old, there should be an activity that's going on there. Everyone, if there's something that's not going right, there are comment cards that should be in those places. The changes should be made. If a private entity is in there, that private entity is supposed to serve the community. It is not supposed to be shut out for anyone. Councilmember Thomas tried that in the past at the Arboretum Recreation Center, and we shut him down with that. We overruled him with that, what's going to take place in our community, because we're what matter in our community. No one else can come in your community and tell you what happens. It is a community. You all are the residents of this community. Those activities, whether 10 people or 100 people show up to that activity, it is designed for the Fort Lincoln community. The pool should be open to everyone. There should be activities. The summertime, if there's a summer camp. In the afternoon, if there's macrame, I know I'm talking about something that people don't do anymore, the macrame, the ceramics, all those different things that took place, they even had etiquette classes that were going on for different things. It's to engage the community. That's how you get involved. You know what's going on in your different clusters of your area.
This is a different question that Mr. Redmond didn't have. So, and it's going to you first, Ms. Manning, but then you as well, Ms. Robinson, but they flip. So you don't live in Fort Lincoln. How are you going to represent Fort Lincoln? And Ms. Robinson, you don't live in non-Fort Lincoln. How are you going to help represent? Because how do you bridge, just like the need to bridge clusters within Fort Lincoln, how do we reach out and bridge this part of Ward 5?
You're absolutely right. I don't live in Fort Lincoln, just like I don't live in Ivy City, South Central, or Gateway. But I still am accessible to that because I do come this way. I am walking and I do come and use the tennis courts. So I may not live, but I have the experience of Fort Lincoln. I would make myself accessible the same way that I do now to my other communities because it would just be Arboretum, Gateway, Fort Lincoln, the little part of Fort Lincoln. And because I am sitting on that commission with the other 12 commissioners, I would still have the stronger relationship with the commissioner that is impacted in this area. And that's how you bring it together because you have to be involved. You have to walk and knock doors. You have to make yourself accessible as always. I mean, being an ANC commissioner, there's nothing glamorous about it. There's no pay about it. You have to enjoy what you do. And my background is hospitality, customer service, and that's what it's all about. Because I am a service to my community. It's a volunteer job, whether I'm in this position. I was my Civic Association president. I even sit with my seniors on Saturday. So I know it's not about where I live. I'm still a resident of Ward 5, and I'm just a crow fly away. So the difference is bringing it together, and that's basically a healthy communication.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Robinson?
Yes, I attended the Arboretum Civic Association meeting, and the way that I would I guess, branch all of us together, I would address the concerns. The last meeting that I attended with the Arboretum Civic Association, one of the concerns they had was how small the recreation was. And they have to hold their meetings in the recreation in between the children coming back and forth. There is the only meeting room that they have is the same meeting room that the children use. So I would definitely see about an improvement for the Arboretum. Now, I also have been somewhat involved with the Gateway, with the Dakota Crossing, Mr. Nolan, who's with the Residents Council. I would definitely do my due diligence to incorporate all of the communities that are under my single member district to address any of their concerns.
Okay. So, one question I didn't ask Ms. Redmond, and then someone else turned in a question, and they're kind of related. We don't always agree on everything in what comes in the city. Some people want Walmart, some people don't want Walmart. Some people want a Costco gas station, some people don't. How do you represent the community's will to the best possibility and consult the organizations rather than just convince the ANC to vote a particular way, and you haven't consulted? Or I mean, so the thing is, how do you consult and then represent the position, sort of like if she's really mean in Wesley House, and it's not, I'm joking, but the point is, people come at loggerheads, and to use the plantation mentality, Walmart knows people are not going to want a Walmart, and they know that people are going to talk at meetings against Walmart, and they know it's going to create so much noise that they won't have to deal with the real issues. So how are you going to cut through that BS like butter?
Which one do you want to answer first?
You're first.
Okay.
Or
All right. Well, I have a serious concern with the Costco gas station, only because of the environmental study and the traffic study that was from 2008, and they have a new traffic study that was from 2012, but it did not, the study by Wells and Associates did not study the traffic on Saturdays when a lot of people shop on Saturdays. So that's why I had a question with the methodology and how she arrived and what would she arrive with. Now, in regards at the Arboretum, the stores at the Arboretum where Walmart supposedly, from my understanding, there are no leases have been signed for the Walmart. And what you really would have to do, Mr. Layman, you'd have to weigh the pros and cons. What's better, as you say when you're a kid, 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. But you really would have to see what is going to be the best for the community. My concern would be, what do the residents really want? What is the best for the community? Not what is the best for the billion-dollar corporations that want to come here and infringe on our quality of life a lot of times, because that's a concern I have with the building over at the shops at Dakota Crossing, because with the noise, I went down to the Fort Lincoln Real Estate Company and I asked, what are we going to do with the noise? And they said, well, they're trying to stay on schedule. And I feel the quality of life of the seniors has to be deferred because of the billion-dollar corporations. Thank you.
I'm just going to throw out a point, just relating to what you said about the traffic study. 70% of shopping is done Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Ms. Manning?
With the, because most of the time, you're absolutely right. We're not going to all agree. We disagree to agree. And you have to come with a common thread of that. And that's why it's so important that you all vote, that you vote on that commission and you hear from what the Civic Association said and you take in consideration of who's being impacted about it, who is going to, and how do we come out of it, and how do we recover from it if it does not go our way. In the past, when I have voted, I've always supported my community on that because I've done the study on what has worked for the community and what has not worked for the community. Our council members have not been supported for our side of town and the different things that need to happen. And a lot of times I'm not the likable ANC because I support my community because we are impacted by that. Great example, the point at the Arboretum. How would that impact that small neighborhood that's clustered around the National Arboretum? Environmentally, that is going to destroy a lot of the plants that's in there. That is gonna, and with the traffic study coming around and they're showing how we're gonna get the big trailers to come around Montana Avenue, the time frame of it going, constantly getting a traffic study, and that's why that actual project is delayed. Now, did the developer do a great job of getting the leases set in? No, he did not, because he did it backwards. He acquired the land first without having the leases in. That is a plus for the community, but at the same time, it's still a great concern because we had to go back out and we had to find the developer and the owner of the community because then it becomes blighted property. And that's when you have to force the DC government agency